Hi there, and welcome to Arts 24. She's a British poet, playwright, fiction writer, award winning and best selling children's author. She was also named a Fellow of the Royal Society of Literature this year. I'm joined by Kiran Millwood Hargrave, whose second novel, her second adult fiction novel, The Dance Tree, has just come out here in France. It's called La Danse des Damnés in French. She's actually touring the country right now to promote the book. It's set in the year 1518 when a dance plague grips the French northeast city of Strasbourg. Women dance for days on end, sometimes dancing to death. Against this backdrop, a story of three women, Lisbeth, Ida, and Agnette, and the family secrets and forbidden love that binds them. Kiran, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, let's start with these book covers. You have these beautifully visual, these artistic book covers, and not just for this one, but for, I'm thinking of The Mercies, I'm thinking of Julie and the Shark, which your husband actually illustrated. Now, often it's quite a contrast to the rather heavy content of your books, this dance plague in the dance tree or witchcraft in the Mercies. Why is that? Is that a deliberate choice?
I think so. I think that there always has to be beauty and there always has to be hope. I really try in my books, however dark it gets, for there to be some glimmers of light and or levity, even humor sometimes. But I love that the covers really draw you in and they invite you to step and be immersed into this world, and they really set the tone. And I try to do that with the titles as well, that they the beginning of the narrative is really with the title.
Yeah, and they seem like they're sort of a work of art in themselves. Now, as we mentioned, the Dance Tree is about this dance plague. It was a real historical event that took place in Strasbourg in the 16th century. Where did this idea come from? How did you come across this?
I actually came across it on a very strange website called Atlas Obscura, which has a lot of odd occurrences that have happened throughout history and strange facts about the natural world and the human world. And I read about this dance plague, and it said it was the largest and deadliest. And I didn't even know that dance plagues were a thing. I didn't know that any dance plagues had occurred. So I began reading about it, and the one in Strasbourg was really momentous, the time it came in the country's history with the retreat of the Holy Roman Empire, and there had been a comet that had been sighted at the turn of the century that many saw as a sign that that century was going to be the end of the world. So people were really under a lot of pressure. They were under religious pressure. They were going through an enormous stage of climate change. There was a lot of immigrations. There was the fear of the other, which was being disseminated by the printing press. So it was like this melting pot, this turning point
of
in
monumental
history.
Change.
Exactly, monumental change that people were afraid of.
Yeah.
And it was under these conditions that several dance plagues broke out across Central Europe. But yes, Strasbourg was the most significant one.
Now, the Dance Tree feels incredibly prescient. It is set in the 16th century, but the views on, without giving too much away, on homosexuality, minorities, the role of women in society, even the cynicism about the church's activities. Did you want it in a way to mirror today's reality?
I can't help but for today's reality to always echo through my writing. And in fact, I think I write historical fiction in order to speak more clearly on the present. I think if I tried to write directly to the present, it would turn into a polemic. It wouldn't be very readable. It wouldn't be, enticing. So historical fiction really allows me to explore those really universal and timeless issues that continue to face anyone who's slightly different in society.
And speaking of that, the female protagonists in your book, they have so much humanity, so much courage, despite their submissive stance in society at the time. Why was this so important to give this sort of front and center role to women in your book?
I'm always interested in women. I'm interested in how they relate to each other, how sometimes their relationships can be weaponized under the pressures of a structure that really seeks to isolate women.
A patriarchal
society,
right?
That seeks to isolate them and pit them against each other. And so that's been the case throughout history, and particularly at this time in history when the roles for women were incredibly defined, incredibly limited. And I wanted women that didn't quite fit into any of those places. And in the dance tree, which people will discover is a real place in the book, they find a safe space through which they can explore their true selves.
Now, the descriptions of Lisbeth's miscarriages are haunting in your book. And in your author's note, you say that it mirrored your own experiences of miscarriage during the pandemic.
Yeah.
Was this a sort of a catharsis for you in a way to sort of exercise that pain you felt during that time?
I've not used that word, but it's absolutely right. Catharsis is how it felt. It was really, in the early stages, this book was almost a scream. And then I had to work really hard to wrestle it into something that would feel relatable to any reader. You know, I really want to invite readers of all kinds in. You don't have to experience those things to feel Lisbeth's pain. And it was unusual for me to use my own experiences in a book. That's not something I do. I prefer to rely on imagination and creativity. But I did find it very healing, and it was a spark of hope for me in a very dark time.
Well, indeed, the descriptions of miscarriage in the book are very, it feels like it was written by someone who was going through it. It felt very, very immediate the way you wrote it. Now, moving on, you also have a new children's book coming out. It's already out. The first in a trilogy. It's called In the Shadow of the Wolf Queen. It's part adventure, part fantasy, with very strong themes of nature and environmental consciousness. Why was it so important for this theme to come through for a children's book? It seems very deliberate.
Definitely. I think, first of all, truth is often stranger than fiction. And so I set myself a rule in The Shadow of the Wolf Queen that all the magic in it would be possible magic. So it's all magic that's nature-led, things that have happened, could happen, will happen with climate change. But also I think it's so important with children's books to make children feel they have a stake, they have a say in the future. And so this is a book that really centers on a very independent, very normal child that will go on to make an extraordinary difference. And I think that we really need children to feel engaged in the environment and not just think, oh, it's hopeless. You know,
beyond our control.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We can and we will change things. You know, if there's one thing I believe in more than human destruction, it's human creativity. And I think that that is something that children are really going to come to the fore in the future.
Yeah, certainly. It's going to be their battle too, and it's important that they're part of that battle. You've had let's talk about your career. You've had a rather atypical career. While many writers struggle for years, they wait for years for success to come. Success came rather quickly for you in the form of The Girl of Ink and Stars. It was a Waterstone. It won the Waterstones Children's Book Prize and the British Book Awards Children's Book of the Year in 2017. Is having success come so quickly a blessing, or is it in a way a poison chalice for you?
I've remained incredibly grounded. Everything good that's come in my career has come as a surprise. I've never expected any of it. So I really came to this because I love stories. I've loved being told stories, and now I love telling stories. And really all you can control in a career are the words on the page. Everything else is luck, timing, marketing. So I really, every time I start thinking, oh, maybe it will get shortlisted for this prize, I really try and bring myself back to what's important, which is sitting with one reader, you know, me telling a story to one reader at a time. And hopefully enough people will enjoy it that I can continue doing this for the rest of my life.
Well, I dare say you'll be continuing to write a lot more books to come. Now, here on the program, we ask our guests to give us their cultural pick of the moment. It could be a film, a book, a performance, or artistic work that has struck them in some way. Now, Kiran, tell us yours.
So mine is Past Lives by Celine Song. It's a film that, it was the second film my husband and I got out the house to go and see without our baby. And it really is just this most perfect one. I think it's 140 minutes long. And it's 1 hour, 40 minutes long. Sorry, I was about to say 2 hours for me is kind of the maximum that I want a film to be. So this is almost a perfect hour and a half where you sink into these other people's lives. And nothing much really happens except you move through time, 12 years at a time. And it's an incredibly tender, truthful portrait of a near miss. You know, what are those other paths? Like sliding doors, but less dramatic.
Right.
But impeccably acted, impeccably scripted, impeccably shot, but without being cold. You know, I find sometimes things that are very well crafted, they don't have that emotional spark to bring them to life. But this, it was just so beautiful. I melted into it, honestly, and I felt in love with everyone on the screen when we came to, and my husband and I felt very grateful to have found each other.
That's nice. You know what? It is on my must-watch list. I'm jealous because it hasn't come out here in France yet. It comes out at the end of the year, but it is already garnering some Oscars buzz. Thank you so much for joining us, Kiran Millwood Hargrave. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for joining us. Let's leave you now with a peek at past lives. Stay with us. There's more news coming up on France 24 and France24.com.
Makes me feel like I can't
좋다.
live without you.
뭐가?
그냥
너랑
얘기하는 거?
The guy flew 13 hours to be here. I'm not going to tell you that you can't see him or something.
만약에 네가 한국을 떠나지 않았다면 내가 널 찾았을까? 우리가 사귀었을까? 헤어졌을까? 부부가 됐을까? 아이들을 가졌을까?
너는 나를 왜 찾았어?
한 번 더 보고 싶었어.